If a man practices semen retention and decides not to dissipate his energies through sexual indulgence, both his organism and his life will greatly improve. However, that is not to say his improvements will be the same as the next man. In fact, they will likely be very different. By virtue of your body's constitution, you inherit certain strengths and certain vulnerabilities to illness. Everybody's body constitution is different. Everyone's tendency towards sexual excess is different. Some men are especially strong physically, with well-developed muscles, while others are more advanced mentally, with powerful brains and nervous system. Much of your biological propensity may be tied up in your family genetics, environment, and even your ethnicity. Your energy tends to be invested more in one area than the other. That is why most physically developed men are generally not the most mentally developed, and vice versa. The geniuses of the past were not known for their physicality, nor were the most physically developed known for their intellectual achievement. Though exceptions exist, this has generally held true. Energy supply in the body is finite, and the allocation of those energies is largely at your own discretion. This also applies to sexuality. A man who has used much of his energies towards the habits of sex has for many years diverted his blood and nutrients down towards his genital region, and thus as a result has left less blood and nutrition available for his mental and physical development. Thus, when a man stops this habit of drainage, his benefits will heavily depend on the composition of his body and the natural orientation of his system. A physically well-developed, strong man will find renewed energy to excel in physical pursuits. His energy-demanding muscles will now have more fuel available, allowing them to grow stronger and recover faster. Likewise, a man who is more developed cerebrally will be able to access higher realms of thought, delve deeper into ideas, and use his heightened intuitive faculties to attain greater insights into his field of study. You cannot expect your benefits to be exactly the same as the next man for this very reason. You are biologically different in many ways, and as such, the consequences of sexual excess will also be different depending on the individual. Consider attractiveness. Although I don't generally like reducing attractiveness to a numerical scale, I'd consider the impact of moving from a 4 to a 5 in looks to be less pronounced than moving from a 6 to a 7. I don't say this to offend or dishearten people, only to express that the benefits you will experience on semen retention are not uniform across the board. If you and your best friend got on semen retention, though I suspect you both would see improvements, those improvements may differ significantly in their characteristics. Some will notice more attraction, some will notice less, as is the case for muscle growth, energy levels, and so on. The best way to deal with this is to simply stay in your lane. You may have a lot less mental acuity or aesthetic appearance as compared to someone else, and thus your progress will reflect that difference. Don't let your speed of progress get you down. Wind back your expectations. Lean into the traits you are naturally gifted with and be patient. This is not to say that an unattractive man cannot become attractive, nor that a physically weak man cannot become strong. But the increments of change may be slower for you than they are for others. The same can be said for an alcoholic who quits drinking or a smoker who quits smoking. Not all will recover perfectly and in the same way. All organisms are in different states of health. Our habits have been ongoing for different lengths of time. Though in general, everyone that quits these toxic habits will experience an overall benefit in their health, and it should become very noticeable over time. It is often thought that those with leaner body constitutions often have less vitality and energy to draw from, simply due to less flesh and less blood. However, perhaps due to their modest usage of energy, thinner constitutions are also known for greater longevity. Those of slimmer builds tend to be of a more neural or nervous disposition. The common stereotype of the jolly fat man is also perhaps somewhat accurate due to his physiology. The nerves in men with a plumper or more endomorphic body constitution seem to be less sensitive to stimuli, and thus the disposition is more relaxed and less highly strung. Those aesthetic muscular men, or mesomorphs, displaying good height to weight and muscle to fat ratios, have long been considered the aesthetic ideal for males. They also often display strong secondary male sexual characteristics, a result of high testosterone, but do so at the cost of some detriment to their overall longevity, so it is thought. That is because strong secondary sex traits are a result of increased testosterone, and increased testosterone accelerates organism senescence and shortens lifespan. This biological cost is similar to that borne by peacocks growing their magnificent feathers, deer developing their enormous antlers, and all other male animals displaying elaborate secondary sexual traits. Regardless of your constitution, I believe semen retention will strengthen your inherited weaknesses and susceptibilities to illness. Just as animals that avoid reproduction remain healthier for longer, men that avoid sexual activity should too remain in a healthier and thus more attractive state for longer than their reproductive counterparts. If and when the time comes, you should of course reproduce, but don't waste that energy for the sake of fleeting pleasure. The life history theory in biology states that energy allocation to reproduction often compromises other physiological functions, including the immune system. Reproductive activity can lead to immunosuppression because resources are diverted away from immune maintenance. In males, it is said that this is due chiefly to the production of sex hormones in the gonads. If the laws of biology state that gonadal activity degenerates the organism, then I believe that to be sufficient evidence that the conservation of these substances would increase the lifespan and the health markers of the individual.